What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Between the Lines podcast with Chris and Aiden. Got a special intro today. Shout out to my co host, my partner, and my friend of like 10 years, Aiden, on his 22nd birthday. Happy birthday, my brother.
Hey, thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. Chris
How
said
you
he turned
feeling today?
today, so
Yeah.
yeah, I'm good. Feeling old. Feeling old. I'm just happy to be doing this podcast with you, brother. As you said, 10 years of friendship for you and me already, which is crazy. Appreciate you. Appreciate my family, my friends that give me all the best wishes, and everybody around me, make my life better. Happy to be doing this podcast with you, doing man. I mean, it was the best birthday gift I could have, honestly, because
Uh,
it's something that we've always talked about doing, and looking forward to hopefully being 45 and still doing this with you. It'd be pretty cool.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Well, we're going to dive right into it today. Got a lot coming up. Best weekend of football. We got the divisional round, followed by the Natty Championship Monday night. A lot of good things going on. Obviously, a lot of NFL rumors, the offseason,
Yep.
coaching, GM search. One thing we forgot to mention last time, it just slipped both of our minds. Probably the big news of the coaching cycle so far, other than Vrabel, is Mike McCarthy out as the Dallas Cowboys head coach, as him and
Yeah.
Jerry Jones could not agree to a contract. So and we got Mike McCarthy taking interviews, and Dallas is going to be looking for a new head coach.
Mhm.
Some interesting early rumors of maybe Deion Sanders making the jump from Colorado to the NFL. There's been a lot of smoke. It came up the other night, and I think everyone was kind of like, "Oh no, this isn't going to happen." But every day, like more and more reporters confirm that they're at least talking about it. So that would be pretty wild. I think we talked about it before couple weeks ago that we both think Dion's coaching style fits best in college because he
College,
kind of
yeah.
he doesn't talk down to them, but he prepares to like transition these guys from boys to men and professionals.
Yeah.
Whereas these,
Yeah.
these athletes like CeeDee Lamb
They're
is and
five.
Dak Prescott, like they're older guys. They've already made their money in the league. Like they're not gonna want to hear that, I don't think. So that would be interesting. I
Mhm.
mean, I know he's very well respected in Dallas, especially.
Yeah, of course.
That's just it just seems like a Cowboys thing to do would be to bring him on.
Well, what I'm hearing a lot about is rumors of if the Cowboys do this, if hypothetically they get Dion, right, is trading Dak and for that number one pick, sending him to Tennessee. I've seen a lot of mock trades with that. I don't know if it's actually real. I highly doubt it is. Um, the other candidate that I would really like to, I mean, as a Giants fan, I don't like to see, but in terms of a fit, is I like Aaron Glenn for the Cowboys a lot. I think Aaron Glenn has that kind of not Mike McCarthy, Mike Tomlin kind of grit to him, I guess you could say. It reminds me of a similar coach, I guess. Defensive minded, and Dallas's defense struggled many times this year, regardless of Micah Parsons. Speaking of Micah Parsons, he was very devastated to see Mike McCarthy leave, which was very interesting to me. Um, which makes you question Jerry Jones' management again, right? I mean, how much that dude? How old is Jerry now? He's got to be in his 90s or something, right? 80s or
Let me
90s.
check.
Yeah, whatever it is. Like,
He's
Jerry's getting old.
82. He's
80
82.
is trying to single handedly do all this stuff. Where I'm like, that's just not how the NFL works now. And a GM that can handle this kind of stuff. Like you can't. I understand Jerry wants to have a little bit of control. You can have influence, but we've seen it time and time again. We just talked about with the Jets and how all that nonsense with Joe Douglas and Woody Johnson or whatever. If it's all that's true, what happens if an owner gets in the way of all this stuff? If Jerry keeps playing this kind of game, the Cowboys are not going to go anywhere. And yeah, respect to Mike McCarthy going like 12-5 for what, like 3 straight years, something like that before this year. But he didn't win anything in the playoffs. He never even got close to the NFC Championship game. So, um, maybe it was time for to move on, but clearly the players think differently. Um, Dion, no, not at all. I don't like him as an NFL coach right now. Maybe if he did a couple more years with Boulder and, maybe won a national championship, maybe won a couple more bowl games, got to the playoffs, got respect, like a little bit more respect, because he did turn around that program. That program was awful before he got there. Like I don't remember ever talking about Boulder, Colorado in any college football discussion ever. And obviously everyone's like, oh well, the media with Shador and Travis helped a lot, but Dion gave them a winning record, honestly. So that's a fair play to him for completely turning that organization around, and let him keep going. And he just talked about how he's free of being a dad now, and I think he's excited to coach Boulder as just a coach. So maybe it'll help more. And I saw him inflict more rules of don't wear slides in school and then in your classes and be in the front row. So yeah, Chris, I agree with you. How we talked about a couple weeks ago. He is a college coach. He's a perfect college coach, and obviously kids are going to want to transfer and play for him, a Hall of Fame, corner NFL corner coach who's having a lot of success. Now, down the road, could I see him becoming an NFL coach? Yeah, for sure. But you need a little bit more experience under your belt until you go and experiment with that kind of stuff. Now, in regards to the Cowboys, like I said, Aaron Glenn or Ben Johnson would be great for them. Um, I don't know where you go from here, honestly. So, Chris, what do you think? Like, would you be mad? Like, as a Jets fan looking for a coach as well, who would you not want to go to the Cowboys in terms of do you think that they would be have a great fit for them?
Um, well, as it stands, my top choice for the Jets is Aaron Glenn, so that would stink to
Yeah,
see him go to the
yeah,
Cowboys.
of course.
I
Everybody
think
likes Aaron
I
Glenn.
think he's the kind of coach that would just be a pretty good fit anywhere because
Yeah,
he's a defensive coordinator, but when you watch the way that he interacts with the team and the way that he handles himself, he just kind of feels
adrenaline.
like an overall head coach where
Yeah,
can deal with anything that comes up. First off, for Boulder, it would stink if they lost Dion after he turned because all they're
yeah,
gonna lose all their recruits most likely, but it's a whole other topic. I kinda surprised that they weren't able to retain Mike McCarthy. Like, Mike McCarthy is not a superstar head coach, but he is a winning coach in this
yeah,
league. He got a
yeah,
Super Bowl with the Packers. His teams are pretty much always in the playoffs. I think Dak
yeah,
had, like, his best year ever offensively under him. So I
yeah.
don't really know who they're gonna find that they're gonna be better with. Like, Jason Garrett was solid, Mike McCarthy was solid. I don't know where you go from here, where you think that this guy is gonna be an upgrade. Because I guess that's probably why you do it, is you think you can get an upgrade. Because I don't think that Mike McCarthy was asking for, like, a crazy amount of money, right? Like, he doesn't
No,
wanna have to uproot his family again and all that.
no.
Um I saw they're interviewing Leslie Frazier and Robert Saleh right now. I
Yeah,
don't take those too seriously. The Cowboys' job, like, it's glamorous, but I don't know how attractive it is to especially first-time
I
coaches.
think
Because
I think it's because of Jerry.
yeah, I
Like what
agree,
you
and,
were about
like,
to say.
do you
Yeah,
wanna go there as a first-time head coach and deal with all the nonsense and then maybe get fired in a couple years and you don't get another job? Like, I don't it feels like a spot where you need to get a coach who's already been fired or, out of the game. Like, that's probably why they're talking to Saleh because he's
yeah,
already been fired and he's looking for his second job. It's just I don't know who would wanna start their career with the Cowboys. Like, there's way too much baggage that comes with that job, in my
yeah.
opinion.
No, I agree with you. If all again, Chris and I know nothing. This is just based off of judgment of media. If all the things of Jerry Jones are true, right? All these quotes he's saying, all these actions he's taking, he just sounds like he might be a bigger problem than anything that's ever gone on in that locker room ever under him. And it's just, he wants that kind of dictatorship control. Like he needs to have impact on the draft and who they bring in for players and different coaches and all that stuff. And that's fine if the coach and GM want to work that way, but not everybody wants to do that, especially as a first timer when you're just getting there trying to make an impression on your team, stuff like that. A guy like Robert Saleh, I can't see being like, "Hey man, you take control and I'll just sit back." Like that's not what he's gonna do. He wants to build a team that he likes. These coaches want to get guys that they trust and they like and they feel like can build a championship roster around. And with Jerry just constantly, it's kind of like Jerry just butting in, kind of, and it's like, I don't know, maybe Mike McCarthy's been dealing with that for the past 4 years, and there's no way he was asking for an insane amount of money because
No.
although he's had great years with the Cowboys, and at least regular season wise. Um, I don't know, just the loss of Dak, I wouldn't blame on him. Obviously, I mean Dak's obviously your quarterback. Um, I can't
This year
really
kind of just felt
blame.
like a throwaway year once Dak
It was
got
just a
hurt,
throw year. I
honestly.
mean, the defense struggled. Dak got hurt, so I'm like, there was nothing they could really do. And but I can't even blame the defense on McCarthy. It's not even him. He's more of an offensive guy anyway. So, we see him. We like you said, Chris, with the Green Bay, he was a mastermind with Rodgers. Him and Rodgers were a great duo. Um, so yeah, I trust McCarthy as a coach for sure, and you know,
I think he'll get a
he'll probably
job too.
he'll 100% get a job. I just don't know
Seems
where.
like the
And Chris, would
Bears or
you?
Saints want him.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Saints might be the best option for him. I don't know if he'd go to Chicago.
I think the
I don't know if
Saints are a
Chicago would
good
take
fit
him.
because
Yeah,
he used to be the offensive coordinator there back before he was the
yeah,
Packers coach.
yeah,
It seems like a good fit for him.
yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know. McCarthy's a tough one because of how much success he has in the like just literally looking at the past 5 years, it's like wow, he's such a winning coach. And then you look at the playoffs, and he's got nothing under his belt, at least in the past
Yeah.
5 years. Is what I'm saying. Um, we'll segue over to
Hold
the
on.
divisional round.
Before we move on
Oh,
too, I just saw something interesting
oh,
popped
here
up
we
on my
go.
phone. So this is a tweet from Ed Werder, Cowboys insider. He's got 241,000 followers on Twitter. So I'm going to put this as a decently credible source.
Okay.
He's saying regarding Deion Sanders, I'm being told that he would almost certainly accept if Jerry Jones made an offer to make him the next Cowboys head coach. Those around him are encouraging him to pursue it, and Jerry Jones is enamored with that idea. So we'll see if anything comes of that. But
What?
I mean, it does seem like two guys who want the spotlight, right? And this seems like a perfect match. If Dion were to make that jump to the NFL, like why not go to Dallas?
Wow. 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 See,
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
honestly, all the talk about like the Giants getting Shador because of like the media and all that stuff. Let Dion go to the Cowboys, bro, because that media is gonna be all over that, and I would not be complaining. Keep the spotlight off of us. I don't want the drama. I'm not saying he'll bring drama, but we did talk about this a couple weeks ago.
Well,
They're
he's
trying
gonna
to like,
bring media attention for sure.
yeah, he'll bring media attention, and it's just a lot like a massive spotlight on a team, and that's not what I want for the Giants, obviously. And maybe Dion makes some move because Dion has always talked about he wants both of his sons on his team if he coaches the NFL. That's what he said. So I don't know what you're gonna do there.
Yeah, I don't think they'd be able to get trade up for Shador just
You have
because
to give up a bag
you
for
have
him,
to.
bro.
Well, you're gonna have to probably trade Dak like in a separate trade
Yeah.
because the Browns wouldn't be able to take on his contract. I don't know if any
No,
team's gonna be able to take on his I don't know if the Cowboys can
Titans
even move
could.
his contract because of how the dead money is gonna be that early into an extension. So I don't see that as a possibility. Um, but it
That's
would be
wild,
interesting
though.
if could you imagine just hypothetically if Dion was coaching the Cowboys and he had to go against Shador one day? Like that would be kind of
Like
crazy. He'd
if
be
the,
game
yeah,
planning
that'd
against
be
his son. Like
insane.
he
Oh my
knows all his
god, yeah.
weaknesses
He
and
knows.
everything.
Yeah, yeah, but Shador
That'd
knows
be cool.
Dion's playbook possibly too.
Yeah, that's true.
That could counter each other. You never know.
Yeah.
But that'd be weird. That'd be so
Yeah, that'd
weird.
be wild.
I don't know. Um, yeah, but I don't know. I just if I'm Dion's gonna do whatever Dion does, but if I'm Dion, I'm staying at Boulder for another 5 years, maybe building a sick program because he has so much potential there.
He's definitely gonna get a raise there too. Like I think
Oh,
they've already offered him an
100%.
extension.
Oh, for sure. And if I'm him, I'd do it because he just like I said, Chris. I mean, how many times did you hear about Boulder before he was there?
They were
You
always
know,
awful.
they were terrible. They were terrible. So, anything more to add on, Chris, before we move on to the divisional
No,
round?
I'm ready to jump into the playoffs and
We
the
got to make our
national
picks, baby.
championship.
All
Yeah,
right,
we do.
we're gonna make our picks. Now, there's 4 games for the divisional round. We'll talk about the national championship for college football after this. I'm gonna just go from AFC to NFC, but starting with the AFC, we got the Texans who, quite frankly, blew out the Chargers, which we talked about last week. Taking on the number 1 seed Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. Chris, go ahead. dive in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we already dove into our brackets, so the picks really aren't going to change, but I'd be happy to just take a deeper look at some of these and
Yeah,
analyze them a little bit. Obviously, I think we're both going to go with the Chiefs. I know they've been off for about, 3 weeks now, but they always start slow in the playoffs. If you remember a couple years ago, they actually played the Texans in the divisional round and were down 24
yeah,
nothing in the second quarter and ended up winning like 52-28 or
yeah,
35 or something crazy like that.
yeah.
So I'm not really that concerned. If they were playing like Baltimore or Buffalo in this first game, I would be way more concerned about the layoff. No disrespect to Houston, but they're obviously not on the same level as those two teams. And I know that when these teams played on Black Friday, I think it was, or it was one of those
Yeah.
like special
Is it
games. I don't
that
know if it
black?
was
Yeah,
Black
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Friday
yeah.
or the day before Christmas, the weekend before Christmas, but it was a close game. But the Chiefs really hadn't hit their stride yet. Like, they were still kinda sputtering on offense, and I think
Mm-hmm.
now they're kind of rounding into form while their defense has been great all year, and
Yeah.
Pacheco's only getting healthier after suffering
Yep.
that, foot injury. So,
Yep.
yeah, I just think the Chiefs have too much for the Texans, quite frankly, for anyone in the AFC. I've made that clear for months or weeks, I guess, that I'm just gonna keep
Yeah.
picking them
Yep.
until something happens, right? And
Yeah.
I think it's nice for the Texans, to be one of the final four AFC teams again. Like that rebuild has gone really well. I think
Yeah.
they need a couple more pieces and they need Stroud to take that next level because the AFC is just so loaded with quarterbacks. I
Loaded.
mean, Joe
Lo-
Burrow is like a top four quarterback
Yeah.
and not even in the playoffs. So
Yep.
you kind of need elite quarterback play in the AFC.
Yeah.
And hopefully, they get Diggs and I don't know if Tank Dell's gonna play next year, but they shore up that
That'd be
offensive
tough.
line, and I think the Texans are gonna be a solid playoff team for years to come.
Yeah, I mean, going back to Joe Burrow, everybody was like bashing, like very upset, kind of. I mean, just like if the Bengals could have won one or two more games in the season, they were in the playoffs for sure. And it was like, oh, these wild card games are so boring. And you know for a damn fact that if the Bengals were in there, they would have competed at least, made a game close in the wild card. Um, but yeah, with the Texans, CJ's played well this year, not as good as his first year, obviously. Like you said, Chris, the Kansas City just hit their stride late. They always do. They just there's something that happens with Mahomes and Kelsey and Andy Reid when they just playoff time comes around. They're like, all right, let's start heating up now. Like they got Marquise Brown back, which was huge. We you and I like broke him down a little bit a couple weeks ago, talking about he's playing that Rashid Rice role, so they have a number one guy, and Xavier Worthy's more valuable. But I'll give credit right now to Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt filled in the shoes of Pacheco really well this year. He's a very underrated, like power back ish kind of guy. Pacheco coming off that injury, you don't have to press him too hard because of the success you're having with Hunt, which is beautiful. I actually have Kareem Hunt scoring a touchdown this weekend, which is kind of bold of me to say, but because I know they have Pacheco and they want to get him going, but you could keep him saved as like in the back pocket for whenever you really need him, and hopefully he's healthier later down the stretch. Um, yeah, I have the Chiefs easily beating them, similar to the times they've played each other in the playoffs in the past. Yeah, they might be off to a slow start, like you mentioned, Chris, but they're just they're the Chiefs, dude. There's nothing else to explain. We talked about it last podcast. When Mahomes isn't relied on, that makes that team dangerous. When Mahomes doesn't have to throw for 300 yards and three touchdowns. So I'm gonna take Kansas City as well. Um, I just it'll be whoever they play against Baltimore Buffalo would be really close in my opinion. I think you think that too. I just think we have different opinions on who's gonna win. But we'll dive into that a little later because we did talk about that with our brackets. But next game for AFC would be probably the game of the year. We've discussed this many times on and off the podcast about what's potentially could be the game of the year. You got Baltimore going into Buffalo and playing the Bills.
I have seen online that there's gonna be some typical Buffalo weather, single digits, maybe some flurries mixed in.
Mhm.
Gonna be one of those, like, hopefully old school slugfests. I know you and I both appreciate playoff football, defense, running the
Yep.
football. A lot of people don't like those games, but I love them. I love watching defense and watching offensive lines, and just I think you really get a taste of like um, fundamental football in that sense
Yeah.
with gap integrity and holding your blocks, and one penalty kind of kills you, and obviously ball security and that aspect. So I think if this were last year and Derrick Henry were still on the Titans, I'd be going Buffalo because I don't think that they have, they had some decent backs last year. They didn't have like that alpha. They had Hill, Keaton Mitchell, Gus
Yeah.
Edwards. They kind of cycled through them, but they didn't have that bell cow where, in a game like this, he might need 30 carries, right?
Yep.
So, and if you give Derrick Henry 30 carries, that
You might
favors
win the
your
game.
offense because
Yeah.
you're controlling the clock and he is just beaten down the opposing team's defensive line.
Yeah.
So I have seen that Zay Flowers didn't practice. He might not play. I don't think it matters too much because I don't think this is
No.
going to be like a passing game. I think we're going to,
Mhm.
if we do, I think a lot of Isaiah Likely and Andrews and a little bit of that 11 personnel with two tight ends. And then Rashad Bateman, I mean, we're both high on him. He's been playing well. I think he can give you a couple catches if you need, but I just think Derrick Henry is the X factor and why I'm picking the
Yeah.
Ravens again. I like what they're doing on offense. They didn't even have to try last week. I know Buffalo will be a lot tougher, but is
Yeah.
Pittsburgh's defense is probably better, right? If you think about it. Pittsburgh's
Yeah.
defense is close, if not better than Buffalo's, and obviously time of possession is gonna be huge. The Ravens are gonna need those long drives, but I still like them, and even though with the weather, I mean, Lamar is this isn't really anything new to him. He's played in Louisville, he's played in Baltimore, he's used to crappy cold weather, so I'm gonna go with the Ravens simply because of Derrick Henry.
Yeah. We talked about this last episode, Chris. I said, or you said you agree with me too. Henry is probably the bigger threat here than Lamar, purely because of how many times you could feed him. You know,
Yeah.
Baltimore, I could easily see them running the ball 45 times this game. And if they win, they go and play the Chiefs, they'll do the same thing because you got to keep a guy like Allen and Mahomes on the bench. We talked about this last podcast. If you want to win the game, win the time of possession. That's it. However, Josh has done things this year for me that have made. I know the Baltimore kind of dominated the Bills this year when they played them. Um, Josh is playing a kind of ball that I can get behind, if that makes sense. I talked about James Cook last podcast. He is not Derrick Henry in any way, shape, or form. However, the way you're describing this game, Chris, is how I completely agree with you. I could see both of these teams running it minimum 30 attempts each. You know, Josh and James Cook, and then Lamar and Henry combining for 30 attempts each. Um, I don't see. I don't know. There's something about Lamar last game. There were a couple of throws I saw where he's got a clean pocket. He's got Isaiah Likely across the field, and it just fell out of his hands. But that happened multiple times where I see him miss a couple of guys. He gets very shaken up, and not just from last week, but if you go back and look at many like very big time serious games, there are a lot of big missed throws by Lamar. Now, is Josh Allen perfect? No. However, I've seen it time and time and time again where it's not Josh Allen, it's the Bills defense that completely throws away games against the Chiefs. And I'm not saying that the Chiefs are lucky or whatever. It's the Chiefs. They're gonna tear down any defense they go against. But the Bills could not get anything on Kansas City many times in the playoffs. If if the Bills lose this game, it's because of the defense, will not be because of Josh Allen. However, the Bills defense played phenomenal last week against the Broncos offense. And I'm not saying, the Broncos offense compares in any way, shape, or form to Baltimore. Baltimore's another level, like you just mentioned, Chris. You can run the ball with Derrick Henry 30 times. That will wear down a defense so easily. But in terms of the passing game, they did let up a huge play on like the first drive, but after that there was nothing for Bo Nix. So if they can adjust to that, have Matt Milano spy like I mentioned last podcast with Lamar, just as much as he can, It's going to be difficult. I understand. Um, the Bills can easily win this game if they get at least a turnover, one turnover, right? That's how I see it happening. It's whoever wins a turnover battle. Um, I think Josh Allen has a phenomenal game. I think he protects the ball well. I think he chooses when to run and when not to run very well. I think he played great ball last week. Get points when you can. That's as simple as I can put it. I don't for a team like Denver, you needed touchdowns in order to beat the Buffalo Bills, but when it's Baltimore and Buffalo, you get points when you can get them because of how high powered both of these teams are. I'm taking the Bills to win this game. I know Chris and I are split on this, but I don't know. I think Chris agreed with me on this. I don't remember what you said, Chris, but I said whoever wins this game is winning the whole thing. I said whoever wins this game going to Super Bowl. I know. Chris doesn't agree. I forgot. Chris, I remember who
Yeah,
Chris picked.
I'm still
Chris
riding
picked
the
the Phillies.
Chiefs all the way.
Yeah. But I think these two Baltimore Buffalo teams are the best we've seen under like Lamar and Josh Allen. I know it's bold of me to say because the Bills' defense has struggled a lot, but I think this is the best teams we've seen. I think they can both easily compete with Kansas City, at least give them a run for their money. I have the Bills going all the way and beating the Lions in Super Bowl. Give me Josh Allen, who should have been MVP this year, but it's not. Um, which is for a whole other argument. But I'm gonna take the Bills.
I also think, to your point, that overall this is the best versions of Lamar and Josh Allen that we've seen in their careers as far as being well rounded. Obviously, Lamar has turned into an elite passer, and Josh Allen has a lot of rushing stats this year, which is kind of funny because you'd think the opposite. But I actually,
Yeah,
would like to get into the MVP debate maybe next episode, or we could
yeah,
wait till the awards come out and we got that break between the Super Bowl and the conference championships. But yeah, I do think the Chiefs will advance to the Super Bowl regardless of who they play, just because I'm not going to pick against Kansas City at this point. Um, I do think that Derrick Henry, like I said, the X factor, because it's so easy for Baltimore to stay ahead of the sticks with Derrick Henry compared to other running backs. Like,
yeah.
how often do you see him taken down in the backfield? And that's what the Bills do
Never.
so well. They stay ahead of the six and have long drives. That's what's going to take, 12 play, 13 play drives that hopefully, if you're on offense, ending in seven as opposed to three. But I agree,
Yep,
this isn't going to be like the wild card where we see teams going for it on fourth down all the time. Like, these teams are much more evenly matched, so you take the points when you can get them.
yep, yep. I just want to add one more thing. Like I said, I already mentioned it, but I'm telling you right now. To me, like you, okay. So you take the two things that you and I have in terms of factors. You said time of possession. I said turnover battle. I believe. Let's say Bills I think Bills get more time of possession because of that play by play. Because if you look at the kind of plays they're running, yeah, they're probably passing it a little more heavy, right? But the kind of pass heavy they're going is a lot of screens, a lot of 5 yard passes, right? And then they get that over the top pass. But I believe that if you keep time of possession, and I think Lamar's the one to slip up in terms of a turnover, right? Probably not a fumble, most likely an interception. I think whoever throws that pick is going to lose the game. I know that's bold of me to say, and it's a lot to it's a hot take, I guess you could say, because it's only one turnover or two, however many turnovers are. Whoever wins the turnover battle is what I really want to say. Will
Yeah,
win this
no, that's
game.
fair. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, we'll go over to the NFC now. Um, I had different matchups for these in my brackets, obviously, but I had the same results. But I don't know. Something's making me rethink one of these games, but we'll talk about it real quick. Rams are going into Philly to play the Eagles, Chris.
Yeah, that's a tough trip for the Rams cross country. Philly's obviously a hostile environment. I think, and I watched that whole Packers Eagles game because obviously, 4:30, a nice afternoon game. Get to sit down and watch it before dinner. The thing that really excites me when I watch Philly is their offensive line play. Now, some people may hear
Yeah.
that and think, "Well, what are you talking about? Like offensive line? Like I'm not watching that." But when you watch their offensive line and the schemes that they run, it's actually incredible. Like
Yep.
they have Mekhi Becton who couldn't even run from the sideline to the huddle without getting hurt while he was on the Jets. He's pulling and he's just pummeling guys on these RPOs and all that. It's just I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but it's just their offensive line just
I know
imposes
what you're
their
trying to say.
will on the opposing defense. And LA has a really good front seven. They've drafted incredibly well. But, similar to the Ravens and the Bills, I mean, Saquon Barkley is just way too hard to contain. I think he almost had 300 rushing yards against the Rams a couple weeks ago when they met on Monday Night Football, and that was in LA. So, he's got the home
Yeah,
crowd on his side. Hopefully, another week of Jalen Hurts getting back into rhythm, connecting with AJ Brown and Devonta. I don't I think the Rams are a really good team, and they definitely have the better coach in this instance. But I've said it for a couple weeks. I think this is the best version of like the Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni Eagles, where they're well rounded and they have the best defense left in the
yeah,
playoffs. So I'm going to go with
yeah,
the Eagles to advance to the conference championship.
yeah. Going back to the offensive line, Chris, is Jeff Stoutland is the offensive lineman coach. Jeff Stoutland. We've seen it. He's had his whole 12-year career with the Eagles. I think he's been the O line coach for the past, I think the entire time, or he's at least helped with the O line every time. I can't remember the last time the Eagles had a bad O line in those 12 years. I guess
Yeah,
you could
it's
say. I
always
think he's
good.
he's done an incredible job, regardless of who's there. You just mentioned Mekhi Becton, who was quite frankly a bust. I don't want to be rude or anything, Chris, or like I can't sugarcoat it. He was a bust. I mean, I've had experience with those with the Giants, but too, like the Jets too, with a lot of busts. Mekhi was supposed to be that right tackle for you guys, that franchise guy or left tackle. Whatever. He was a tackle for you guys, right? And then they
He
moved him
was a
to
left
guard.
tackle. Yep.
Yeah, he was at left tackle, and he moved him to guard. And look what he's doing now, like you said. So this guy's clearly a wizard, and he's clearly helping Sirianni with developing this offensive scheme for them because these guys are able to create such big gaps for probably the most dangerous running back in the NFL. And you know what's crazy is look at all the running backs before him, before Barkley. You got Miles Sanders, who left and got a big contract for Carolina. He's nowhere now, but he had a massive years. He had great years with Philly. DeAndre Swift last year got a pretty decent contract from Chicago. Hasn't really, he's done decent, but you know what I mean? It's not the same, right? A running back behind this line is insane. And it just goes to show when you invest the right guys in this line and you invest the right guy to coach this line, um, what happens for a running back. Maybe it is more the offensive line than the running back, and that's a whole other conversation that I would like to get into. But yeah, when you have a guy like Barkley behind that line, like we just mentioned, with time of possession and running the ball, dude, he is probably the most dangerous offensive weapon in the league. Um, Probably right up there with Derrick Henry. And if you can run the ball 25, 30 times with him and he's getting 250 yards, forget it. You're going to easily win this game. Now, I originally in my bracket, I had LA going to play Lion. No, I always had LA playing the Eagles. And I had, hold on, I'll look real quick. I had, is the Buck, well, what seed were the Buccaneers? Are they
I
four?
think they were a four. Yeah, I think they were
Were
four.
four, and or were the Rams four? I think. Oh no, the
Let me
Rams were
see.
three. The Rams
Oh,
were
okay.
three, I believe. The Rams were three, and the Bucks were four. So I had the Bucks playing the Lions originally, but I don't know. For some reason I thought
No,
the
the
Bucks
Bucks
were
were
going to play the
three. Yeah,
Eagles.
the Bucks were three,
Oh, the
and the
Bucks were three,
Rams were
Rams were
four.
four. That's what it was because
Yeah,
I had the Rams
yeah,
playing the Lions. I had the Rams playing the Lions originally, and then the Bucks playing the Eagles. And then
yeah.
although I had the Lions and Eagles playing each other, I thought they were going to be a lot closer games. But I'm looking at this now. Rams are the dark horse in that NFC for me, and I feel like we've said that for the past couple of years.
Yeah, I think they have the best coach, so that
They
certainly
have the best
helps.
coach for sure. And in terms of, and at least for the NFC, they have it's between him and Campbell for sure. Um, I'm gonna go Eagles here, but I think this is an extremely close game. We saw Hurts, quite frankly, do absolutely nothing last week, and I'm not saying because they needed him in any way, shape, or form. I mean, you ran the ball when Barkley got over 100 yards. Your defense played incredible, but this is a different Rams offense who just tore apart probably a top three defense of the season with Minnesota. They had an astounding year with Brian Flores, and I know the Eagles' defense is probably equivalent, if not better, than the Vikings' defense. But McVay, like we just talked about, great offensive mind. Stafford, great veteran quarterback. Cooper Kupp, great veteran. Nakua, stud. This is a little more loaded offense than Green Bay because Green Bay was a little bit more injured. Um, I could see the Rams keeping it close, like 30-27 and losing. However, I would not be surprised if they get the ball last and they can score a touchdown or a field goal to win it. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. I have the Eagles winning. The Eagles winning. But this is the game to watch out for, in my opinion, that could be leaning towards the Rams. Okay, it's just gonna be a really close game. So I'm gonna take Philly. Um, we're gonna go over to the last game now. This one's very interesting to talk about as well. I think most of these NFC games have been very split. Um, even going back to the wild card. The Commanders are going against the Lions, the 1 seed versus the 7 seed, David versus Goliath, if you want to call it that. Chris, go ahead.
I like the Lions. They're getting healthier.
Mm,
I just it's hard to see them going one and done in the playoffs. It
yeah.
seems like they're getting David Montgomery back, so that's huge for their offense. Obviously, they can go back to Sonic and Knuckles. But to be honest, I mean, I wouldn't push Montgomery in this round. Like, I don't know if you're gonna need him. And Jahmyr Gibbs is just so hot right now that I would lean and give Gibbs the majority of the rushing attempts. If I were Ben Johnson in the Lions offense, I like the Commanders. I do think they kind of have some of that like cardiac Commanders in them where they live for the
Yeah.
fourth quarter in those close games when you see how they've been playing and just some of the crazy finishes that they've had. Credit to Jaden Daniels for going on the road and winning his first playoff game. Like he doesn't even look like a rookie. He's just so poised. We talked about it last week. He doesn't seem overwhelmed by anything in his young career so far. I just think this Lions team is better than the team last year. So I would be very surprised if they went out in the first round. And they're just so well rounded in all three phases. They have a top
Yep.
offense, a top defense. They're going to lose both coordinators to head coaching jobs. Like this, even the coaching staff is just loaded. So if
Yep.
Jared Goff just continues to be that high level facilitator, and they do such a good job of scheming their receivers open over the middle of the field, whether it's JMO with his blazing speed or Amon Ra with his precision route running, that you don't have to like force the ball 40 yards down the field. You kind of can just let Goff drop back in a three or 5 step drop back and just
Yep.
fire it right over the middle. And then obviously Laporta hasn't been utilized nearly as much as his rookie year, but he is still a very dangerous weapon that you have to account for
Yeah.
on defense.
Yeah. Um, like you said, Chris, the Lions are just too complete of a team. Again, Jaden Daniels and that offense are great. I think their defense ranks 30th in rushing. I mean, that's I you don't even have to bring like you said, you don't have to bring Montgomery back for this game if you don't want to. Don't force him back. Bring him back for the NFC Championship game if anything. Give him another week's rest. Let Gibbs feast. Um, because it's quite obvious what's going to happen is they feed Gibbs. Well, it's like we talk about time and time again what you just said about Laporta or Amon Ra going across the field on a play action pass, right? They're going to load the box up, take it to Gibbs run, play action, quick 5 yard dump off to Laporta or Amon Ra. They take it to the house or Jameson Williams. Doesn't matter. The Washington defense has struggled greatly this entire season. And what was it? The past like 6 games, something like that, have been decided on the last play or something. Right? Like 5 to 6 games, like a field goal or an extra point or a 2 point conversion or a last play touchdown. That's been the last 5 games for the Commanders. They've barely edged out. The Lions are not going to do that to them. Okay, they're going to tear apart that defense. Um, well, I think Jaden scores points. Yeah, I think Jaden that offense scores a lot of points against the Lions, which is bold of me to say. I know that because of what the Lions defense is capable of too. But I could see them. They're not going to keep it close, but I think this is one of those games where I just feel like the Lions are going to drop 40 on them, and it's going to be like, wow, this is just brutal. But I could see Washington putting up 28. It's just not going to matter. That's it. It's just not going to matter. So I'm taking the Lions easily here to go against the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. Um, there's not much to talk about, Chris. I think you said that really well.
Yeah, the Lions don't really leave points on the board either. So
Yeah.
This will
Yeah.
probably be a game where the Commanders have to go for it on fourth down because they need touchdowns instead of field goals, compared to some of the
Yeah.
other games where you can take your three and
Yeah, you can't.
the Lions are always a threat to put up 40 points. So
Yep. And yeah. No, and yeah. Um, yeah, I like Dan Campbell. I think the Lions go to the Super Bowl. Which is gonna be crazy. Crazy NFC championship game if Lions Eagles go against each other, but we'll get into that next week. Um, National Championship, college football. Ohio State, Notre Dame, two teams that well, Marcus Freeman apparently played for Ohio State. I didn't even know that. I don't know. This is gonna be a tough one, Chris. I think you want to go first.
sure. I think it is going to be. I think this is a good matchup for the first college football playoffs ever. Two, blue blood programs, and obviously the seeds like don't matter at all coming into the playoffs. Ohio State was the 8 seed, and Notre Dame was the 7. So it's not like you even had two top five teams or the teams that were on a bye. It seems like the bye may have actually hurt the teams who were on it because every team that was on a bye ended up losing. So I don't know if
Mhm.
that extra rest has any benefit, especially when Arizona State got a bye, but their side of the bracket was Texas. Like that's a brutal draw. And then Boise State, similar thing. Their side was Penn State. Like that's a tough draw. With that being said, um, I do think I'm gonna take Ohio State to win a national championship. Ryan Day he's been under a lot of heat the last couple months. They lost to Michigan.
Yeah,
It didn't look that great coming into the playoffs, but I just think they have too many options on offense to where it's
yeah.
hard to slow them down. Like Jeremiah Smith didn't even have like he was barely a factor in the last game and they still won by 2 touchdowns. And obviously they had the scoop and score touchdown, which kind of put the game away. I just think they're a really complete team. But I think it's gonna be close. I mean, Notre Dame barely beat Penn State. It took like a Drew Aller a little bit of a disaster for them because they kind of looked like they
Mhm.
were on the ropes, and then Aller gave it right
Don't
back.
remind me.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I'm joking.
Ohio State's -8. I think Notre Dame covers. I mean, I've been pretty wrong in saying that. Like, I don't think the spreads are right, but I'm going to stick with that and say that I think Notre Dame covers, and maybe this is like a field goal game or a 4-point game. It just they're both really good teams. I think we're in for I don't think it's going to be like national championships of old where we saw Jalen Hurts and Deshaun Watson going back and forth for like 40 points. I think it might be a
No.
little bit closer. It's similar to the Notre Dame Penn State game.
Yeah. Well, you specifically, Chris, have mentioned this countless times in the podcast. There is no designated like superstar quarterback, right? There wasn't really
Right.
many in the playoffs, which was kind of nice to see. We talked about how we kind of like that, and this feels like that kind of game where it's like you're not gonna. I guess the quarterbacks will obviously be a factor, but it's not like they have a spotlight on them. You got Jeremiah Smith, you got Jeremiah Love on Notre Dame, you got all these other skill position players that really have to step up. And two really tough defenses that'll go against each other. I'm very interested to see how Notre Dame lines up against those receivers. I mean, obviously, these people. Texas figured out how to stop Smith, but they didn't figure out how to stop Ohio State in general. You take Smith out of the game and everybody else is wide open. That's the problem. So the Smith did was able to be locked down a little bit against Texas. So if Notre Dame could take some advice from Texas, I would too. But I don't know. It's gonna be a tough one. I'm gonna take Ohio State purely for the fact that we've just talked about well-rounded teams. They're just so complete. Who do I like more as a coach? I love Marcus Freeman. I know he's had some on and off time, but he's building a great program over there at Notre Dame. Um, Something about his halftime speech against Penn State, as much as I hated seeing Penn State losing as a Penn State fan, something got me fired up when I listened to him talk. He's got great management of his team. The boys respect him a lot. So they're gonna play their hearts out for him, which is no secret, obviously. Um, so I agree with you, Chris. I think this is a lot closer than people think. everybody's saying that it's going to be a TCU Georgia kind of situation. It's like 63-7 or some crap like that. I don't see that happening at all. This is a completely different kind of championship game. Will Howard is obviously not the greatest quarterback, but he's got great skill position around him. As long as he doesn't turn the ball over, don't jinx it, obviously. But I think if Notre Dame can get a couple interceptions on him, that's a huge, huge factor for this game is the turnover game. If Riley Leonard can protect the ball, I think Will Howard might throw a pick or two in this game. And they might force him to throw to other people other than Jeremiah Smith, which maybe messes him up a bit. Is that bold of me to say? Yes, but I like Notre Dame a lot. Yeah, I'm gonna take Ohio State. It's a tough matchup.
Yeah, it
It's
is a
hard to
tough
pick.
matchup. I think
Um,
it's a toss-up. Obviously, the turnover battle is huge in every game, but especially in a game like
yeah, for
this where we
sure.
expect it to be close, I do
Yeah,
think it's going to be a huge factor.
yeah. I believe that in order for Notre Dame's got to take a couple drives away from Ohio State. That's it. I mean, even if it's turnover or fourth down, right? Having them punt it. You can't. I don't know. You can't go into a shootout with Ohio State. That's what I think. If you let it go into a shootout, Notre Dame's gonna fall behind very easily. So give me Ohio State. But if Notre Dame can win the turnover battle and stop them a couple of times on defense, then they have a real shot at winning this. Um, let's see. We got anything else to talk about, Chris? Or is that it?
I think that, I said, as far as games, should be an exciting weekend of
Yeah.
football. Obviously, coaching searches are. I keep seeing a little bit of Raiders and
Rumors.
Ben Johnson, maybe
Yes.
making that a partnership. I don't know if I love
Yeah.
that for Ben
Ooh,
Johnson. I mean,
I
he's
know what
gonna
I'm gonna
get.
talk about.
Um,
But go ahead.
I just think he's gonna get the control that he wants, but they don't have the quarterback in play, so that'll be interesting. But I want to hear what you have to say.
I was gonna talk about the Giants real quick. Okay, because you asked a
Yeah.
lot about we talked about talking about this eventually. I'm only gonna talk about it for a couple minutes. I don't want to take too much time. Um, okay. So the Giants bring back Joe Shane and they bring back Brian Dable. People, my family, my friends ask me how do I feel about it. Chris texted me right after it happened how I feel about it. I'm gonna save it for the podcast. But here I go. Okay. Brian Dable and Joe Shane, the people that are defending them here's their reasoning. The famous quote that I'm hearing all over the comment sections on social media is they didn't get their quarterback. Okay. They didn't draft their quarterback. Okay, let's look back. Okay, let's look back real quick. They have to deal with Daniel Jones for at least a year. They go to the playoffs with him, right? He did not have a great year. Barkley had an incredible year. Okay. And everyone's saying, oh, Daniel Jones is the franchise guy. No, he's not, right? What do Dable and Shane do? Instead of possibly drafting a quarterback, signing another one, trading for one, they decide to let the best offensive player since prime Odell Beckham leave, right? And keep the guy who threw 15 touchdowns in the season. I think they chose a quarterback. Okay, that's my opinion on it. I think they chose a quarterback, and they chose Daniel Jones, and they chose to ride with him. Do I believe they should leave? I don't know. A coach and a GM need a lot of time to develop a team. Now, where are they going from here? I don't know. I don't know what the draft is going to hold. But people saying that they didn't get to pick a quarterback is blasphemous to me. Okay, because they single-handedly said we want Daniel here. Okay, they decided let's give him $40 million a year. You can't do that and say, oh, they didn't get to pick a rookie quarterback or whatever it was. They didn't get to pick the franchise guy. They had a chance to let him go if they wanted to. Because I guarantee you, he's not getting that kind of money in any other team. Maybe the Raiders at the time, because they were desperate for a quarterback, but I don't care what people say about this. Joe Shane and Dable managed the Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley contracts so poorly that it made me think they don't really deserve the job after this. However, I will say I love Dable as a coach. It's more Joe Shane I'm just really not happy with. Chris and I dove into Chris actually broke it down entirely with all his draft classes. This is probably the first good draft class he's had in what 3 or 4 years or whatever it's been, 3 years. Um, you draft a guy like Malik Neighbors, which is probably a given. You could have gone Malik, you could have gone Joel Alt, you could have gone Brian Thomas. All those guys were hits, so it doesn't really matter what you went. Um, you got a guy like Drew Phillips, which is honestly a steal for me. You got Tyler Nubin, who's the best safety in the draft, who's had a pretty decent year as well. So you fix up the secondary a little bit. So respect to Shane for this year. But if you look at the past couple of years, Kayvon Thibodeau, very underwhelming. Let's see. He made a trade for Brian Burns, which is not bad, but Burns did not have a great year this year. So in my opinion, who do I think they should have kept and who do I think they should have let go? They should have kept Dable and they should have let Joe Shane go. That's my opinion. However, we all know in the NFL, if you bring in a new GM, what are they going to say? Oh, I want to pick my head coach. Maybe this GM that we brought in, if we let Shane go, doesn't want Dable. So yeah, Dable probably would have been gone as well. But in terms of the Giants, they're just so broken right now to me. And it stinks to hear this. And I hope that this offseason with free agency and this draft class, Joe Shane and Dable prove everybody, including myself, wrong. Because there was a glimmer of hope when they first got here. And I loved it. I was so happy and there was new energy and it was great. Right? And if they can go back to that and find a quarterback that is just reliable, right? When I say the word reliable, I think of Eli Manning. I know I bring him up a lot, Chris. I know he's like my favorite player, one of my favorite players growing up. Well, Eli Manning was reliable. Okay, he didn't turn the ball over. He played smart, at least in his prime, right? The teams he played on had a great running game, a great offensive line, and a great defense. Build those things first. Get a reliable quarterback. That's all I got to say. Um, but you got editing to bash about your Jets right now.
Yeah, I think I'll wait until they make a hire. Hopefully, when we
Yeah.
record next week, they have a GM. They're supposedly done with their first round of interviews. So hopefully they interviewed 15 candidates at least for the GM, I think.
Yeah.
So hopefully that gets cut in half, and then they're still working on the first round of interviews with the coaches. I know they have Bobby Slowick today, Brian Flores tomorrow, and Arthur Smith tomorrow. So hopefully that
Yeah.
gets. It seems like what they're going to do is second round of interviews maybe this weekend, pick a GM early next weekend, and then have the GM sit in on the coaching search.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. It would make the most sense. But I just wanted to say something quickly about
Go
the
for it.
Giants. Um, so I don't think they should have brought back Dable and Shane because I think we can already see how this time next year what we're going to be talking about. The Giants most likely are going to be searching for a coach and a GM. You know, I said it to you a couple months ago. If you bring them back, like in all likelihood, they're drafting a quarterback this year, right? Whether that's, Jackson Dart or I don't know, maybe Travis Hunter in the first round, Jackson Dart in the second round. I don't know. I'm seeing some more speculation that Jackson Dart might end up going in the first round just because of need and how weak this class is.
Yeah.
But regardless, they're going to get a quarterback at some point. So you're going to get a quarterback, win 4 games, 3 games, 5 games maybe, and then
Yeah.
probably
At
fired
most.
Table and Shane. So it's like, why not just get ahead of it and do that now? It doesn't make sense to keep them if you're probably going to fire them because John Mara said he's got no more patience left, and I mean the Giants have been bad for like 12 years. Like his patience should have been worn out a long time
Yeah.
ago. But if you're gonna fire them, because he hasn't said it, but like they're gonna be asked next year. Excuse my language, right? You agree?
Oh, you're absolutely correct. I agree with you.
And then you're going to fire them after 1 year and a second offensive coordinator for this quarterback. And the GM that's going to come in is not going to be the guy that drafted him. It just
Yep,
feels like a
it's
recipe
a
for
history repeats
disaster.
itself. It's history repeats itself. That's what it is,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the coaches before Dable and the GM Dave Gettleman especially, but before Joe Shane were great. But I'm just saying, you rotate through these guys so quickly. You can't expect anybody on that team, not even just offense or not even a quarterback specifically, on the team to develop and to build trust and to build a community with each other. You can't expect that. And I understand what Mara is saying when is giving Dable and Shane on a chance right here, right? And what do they need to do? They gotta draft In my opinion, Chris, I don't think they draft a quarterback in the first round. I think they do take a guy like Dart in the second round. I don't really want Milrow, but that's just me being personal on stuff like that. I know you said like with Dart's value in terms of just being a quarterback, it could shoot up to the late first round. Um, but yeah, a guy like Dart in the second round would be great to have, and then get a bridge quarterback maybe. I'm not saying you're gonna win 8 games. You might win 6 at most, and maybe just fight. That's what I'm saying. Fight and compete in these games is what I'm asking for, right? Because Drew Lock just popped off at the end of the year for no reason. I'm not saying that, he's an awful quarterback, but he's not exactly a starter. You got to get that line beefed up as per usual. Um, Give us a team that shows you're fighting. That's all I'm asking for. Um, I don't think it should be that difficult for Shane to draft the right guys this year. I think Cam Ward and Shador are obviously the top 2 picks. Just go best player available, dude. My hot take is take Abdul Carter. I know that's weird considering we have two solid or not solid pass rushers, but I believe we can get great value for a guy like Kayvon. If we Chris and I could play, instead of Dollhouse, we play GM House and pretend Chris and I are GMs of our own teams. We can make some moves. But I think you get a couple, maybe a third and a 6th round pick maybe for Kayvon because he's so young. Draft Abdul Carter because he's I was talking about this with my cousin like last week. He was like, he's a TJ Watt, Micah Parsons game disruptor. I mean, Travis Hunter's great and all, and if you want, but Chris and I broke him down a little bit. He can be great, but I think in terms of a game changer, Abdul Carter is a big deal. I think he brings back that Michael Strahan, Lawrence Taylor vibe for the Giants. He'd be a great addition. Um, so yeah, him and Burns would be terrorizing. Him, Burns, and Dexter Lawrence, forget it. I would cry if I saw that happen. It'd be a beautiful thing. And yeah,
You
you
can
get
never
some
have
more.
enough pass rushers.
Oh,
So
of course, of course, of course. But yeah, just Joe Shane has to do things this offseason in terms of signings, trading, draft, right? You got to impress me at all 3 of those in order to convince me that, okay, maybe he is building something here, right? Because you just had a great draft. Right? You had a great draft, right? But this was your first one. You could replicate that and you could do some offseason trading and some free agent signing well. And yeah, maybe you'll earn some of my trust back, right? But it's got to be this year. You got one chance at it, you know? And no, I don't think it's going to be an easy turnaround when you go, 9-7 or whatever, 9-8, and make the playoffs again. It's not going to happen. Okay, but you got to show that you can put together a team that can fight. Okay, that's my last take on that, Chris. If you got anything else to add,
I think you covered it. I agree. Certainly, it'll make for an interesting off-season debate once we get closer to that in a couple weeks. But for now, I'm just excited to watch these playoff games, see who's going to the conference finals, and then obviously who wins the Natty on Monday night.
yep, yep. I'm excited for those games too. Chris and I will be talking about it throughout the week. And we'll get back to you guys with some takes after the games. But yeah, looking forward to the off season. Hopefully everybody's had a great day, had a great week. Thank you everybody for listening. We appreciate you guys as always, and thank you everybody out there for my birthday wishes. I know Chris mentioned it before. Very grateful for everything in my life and all you guys. Very grateful for this podcast. Chris, thank you for bringing up the idea. So yeah, thank you guys, and thank you for listening. Take care.